Yo, yo.
Hello, hello, hello.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining again. See over 100 of you in here already. Fantastic. I actually just went to check what episode of Spicy Takes this is because I realized last week that I forgot how many episodes we've done so far.
Yeah.
This is week 32 of Spicy Takes. We've been at it for over half a year now. It's gone by super quickly. And the guests just keep getting more interesting. Today we got RG from Reppo coming on. They've been absolutely killing it. RG had the pleasure of meeting myself at the accelerator program here in SF that I was talking to you guys about last week. And I think I was bull posting Reppo a little bit last time I was on here and talking about how cool your app was. So yeah, I'm super excited to be working with RG, and today we're going to get into what that working relationship looks like. RG, why don't you tell the folks about your history, how you got into crypto, the last work you did, how you started this company. I had the pleasure of hearing it when we were doing a little weekend trip together, but yeah, I think it's a super interesting story to tell everyone here.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for the intro, Matt. Hi, everyone. Great to be here, the Spicenet community. Yeah, for me, I used to work at Filecoin for about 3 years. And there I was doing a bunch of things, scaling the network. We went from storing 2 petabytes of data to 18 petabytes, which is, quite a big achievement for like a Web3 network. And so a lot of that was, growing, onboarding storage providers and onboarding data kind of owners. And in that process, because Filecoin became so big, all these incentives were being given out, and there was a lot of incentive abuse. So at one point, I started building MLAI models to detect those incentive, fraud detection, reputation, all that, fun stuff. And I realized that you needed access to all this off-chain data. So you had, of course, on-chain data about how deals were being made on network, but you had off-chain data like telemetry data in data centers, or you're looking at data transfer costs. I learned that 60% of the world's data, I mean, maybe the number is a bit like less now, moves in shipping containers. I spent a lot of time in cities close to the ocean, and when I would look at the shipping containers, I always thought they were just shipping food, but apparently a lot of hard drives are being shipped across the world. So that was super interesting. But yeah, that's how Repo started. We figured out that, hey, you need an incentive layer to crowdsource all this off-chain data, specifically for DPINs at the time. And DPINs were very hot, as a narrative. I still think they're very relevant. But yeah, that's how I started out. And through some, as any startup goes, through some pivots and through some trial and error, we realized that the kind of stuff that Scale AI is doing, which is RLHF data sets, DPO, all this anything to do with AI training data, that's where the gap is. So we built out the mechanism, published a white paper, and then that's what we're doing today. We're building an ecosystem to crowdsource and monetize AI training data at planetary scale.
Yeah, if we could kind of double click on the problem there, like put very bluntly, what's
Mhm.
the issue with data solutions right now, or the data itself that you guys are taking on as a challenge?
Yeah, so there are three main issues, right? So you look at a company like Scale AI, or Toloka, or some one of these like big players in Web2. My perspective is, they mostly act as arbitrage businesses where they have a shop, somewhere in North America to accept US dollars, and then they have a network of data vendors that they ship the jobs to. Depending on where you stand, I believe that those workers in developing countries are exploited. They're paid $2 an hour, so there's like some stuff there. But also, what's happening? The problem that the broader business problem that we're going through is high OpEx to source AI training data, which prices out a lot of smaller businesses and individual entrepreneurs. And as AI is becoming accessible, what we're seeing is everyone has the ability to fine tune, but not everyone has the ability to source the data to fine tune,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, the data is becoming really expensive, and then I think a lot of synthetic data is being created because of that as well, right? And like I heard a stat, maybe you know what the actual number is, but it's like essentially most of the data that's training AI is synthetic data and not really humanized at all.
Yep.
Um, what do you see being an issue, related to that?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop this link what people can check out later. But there was this article that was circulating on X, last week, which talked about how human AI data, like human labeled data, is actually $1 trillion market. So you have, of course, and I'm not shy from saying this. So you have, of course, great protocols like Grass and a few other protocols that have done this well, where they incentivize people to scrape. But let's be honest, right? Like when you look at Grass, right? Great business, but they pay people like some points to like run the scraper, and they monetize the business like Grass. And I mean, there's been some like a lot of like discussion as a deepen network. Have they really kind of flown back all the value that was generated back to the token holders, right? And our belief has always been that like you shouldn't have to depend on the foundation or an entity to flow the value back to token holders. Like the mechanism itself should be that. So to come back to what you're saying, yes, a lot of scraping is being done, a lot of synthetic data is being created, but what we're realizing is if you want to create an image on ChatGPT exactly the way you want, even in 2026 you can't do that, right? It takes like so many iterations, and at some point you just get frustrated and you're like, okay, I'm just not going to do it. And I think that's the main challenge is if there's this 5 levels of AI that OpenAI published. Level 1 is chatbot, level 2 is kind of like better chatbot, level 3 is agents, level 4 is AI doing creative work, level 5 is AI running organizations. We're sort of at level 3.
Yeah, I remember that from your pitch like last weekend.
Yeah.
When you did the in-person pitch. We're trying to get to level 4 right now. What's standing in the way from like that transition from level 3 to level 4?
Domain specific niche data. That's what's standing in the way. We no longer need people labeling cat and dog, or people labeling this is coffee, this is tea. We need people looking at MRI scans and telling us, which one's a better scan than the other. As we speak, I went to an event in SF the other day where I learned that doctors are getting paid $5,000 an hour US dollars to label MRI images. And so that's what's happening.
So essentially, okay, so that's the operational expense that you said before. Like it becomes super expensive to get this high quality data and essentially have like the human filter it and say like this is the high quality data, this is the less high quality data.
Yeah.
Where do you guys come into play there?
So where we come into play is in the pipeline to source the domain experts. So because our model works on a prediction market mechanism, if Matt here is an expert in DeFi, I don't need to go hunt him down and try to like negotiate like how much do you want an hourly wage. Matt just comes in, looks at the incentives. So we use a V token mechanism. So think of it like Aerodrome, right? If you're trying to LP into like a pool, you just look at which has the highest fees, which has highest liquidity, and that's where you would LP. Similar to that, you come to Reppo.ai, and especially on V2, you'll be able to see. And even today, you can see how much emissions is a subnet giving out, right? What is kind of the problem they're solving? And the domain expert says like, hey, is this relevant to my knowledge expertise? And then if it is, they lock some Reppo tokens and start participating in mining Reppo.
Right. So it's like on Aerodrome, like the currency when you're an LP is the APR, right? So like I'm gonna go where the APR is highest, whereas on your platform the currency is actually like the relevance of knowledge. So like the equivalent of me going to the highest liquidity LP pool on Aerodrome is like on your platform going to the one where I'm most knowledgeable. And I'll just tell them like how this works. I'm gonna say the magic word, right? It's prediction markets. Let's go. So the way that this works, and yeah, you can elaborate on this. My understanding from talking to RG is like the data comes through this subnet. People are basically voting on the quality of it, and you get rewarded. So you're staking capital up front, and you're only going to get rewarded if you are on the side that the majority is on when it comes to voting. So this means that like the wisdom of the crowd basically dictates how the market settles. like on Polymarket, right? If you're on the side where 90% of people voted yes, like on Polymarket, if you're on that correct side, then you're getting rewarded for your vote, right?
Right. Exactly. And I think one thing I just want to clarify here is, well, two things. One, Repo is the only protocol, to my understanding today, that is using prediction markets as a means to an end instead of the end itself.
Yeah.
Right. Like we are a prediction market to the extent that it helps us create AI training data. It's not a zero sum game on Repo, and so that's kind of tying into the second thing you said, Matt. Even if let's say you publish like a picture of your dog, and I published my vibe coded app. Even if my app got like 5 votes and your thing got the most number of votes, I will still get some emissions, because the idea here is that I didn't lose. I just the person who's collecting the data still got some interesting insights. Still got it
Yeah.
labeled, right? So I will still win, and so it's really this positive sum game where everyone really wins, even if you get like a little bit of vote, right? But you won't get the majority.
Right,
Yeah.
because you have like the external consumer for the outcome of this market, right? So it's like on Polymarket, it's a zero-sum game because I'm right and you're wrong, and when I'm right, I'm gonna get paid out, and you're wrong, so you lost money. But because the outcome of this prediction market on Repo is actually useful information to somebody else who's willing to pay for it, then everyone who participated in the prediction market and who supplied the content in the first place, like they can get paid out, and the beneficiary on the other end is like the consumer of that data, and they're just getting the data cheaper than they would if they had to source it themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, I think like this article that I shared in the chat, it captures this notion really well, and I think it takes a little bit for people to understand like why this is different than a traditional prediction market. We call it synthetic prediction markets, is because like what's happening is that there's no like right or wrong when it comes to data, right? Like there's actually no concept as good data, bad data. And this is like the biggest mistake that people make. We made this mistake at Filecoin. Let's incentivize good data, let's disincentivize bad data. Like, no, like there's nothing like that. Of course there's noisy data and less noisy data, but all data is useful to someone based on their use case, right? And I think that is something that we really hone in on. So I would encourage the audience, if they're really interested in like understanding, okay, like what is the meat here, I would encourage you to like read this article, where they really go like how the data landscape is evolving, and yeah.
It does. How well, like, do you want to use this graphic to
Sure,
quickly
yeah.
unpack it?
Yeah. So I think if you look at this graphic, right, I mean, it's kind of complicated, but a really good way to think about Repo, each subnet on Repo. So each subnet on Repo is a prediction market in itself. But from a technical ML, machine learning, or AI kind of research language, it's a reinforcement learning environment. One of my favorite teams in this space is actually Jensen AI, and they built this Minecraft kind of like thing, right, as part of the testnet. I don't believe they mainnet yet, but yeah. So every action you're taking, right, you're playing Minecraft. Every action you're taking is actually data. It tells something about like, because if you chose to like fly, like if you chose to like go direction A instead of direction B, that is actually really, really interesting data for an AI researcher, or someone using the training data. And the same thing is happening on Repo. As much as people are interested in knowing like which published content that you voted for, it's equally relevant for me to know like why did you not vote for everything else. And so, right, and that is I think the crux of this, to simplify for the audience, is the reason this matters, and this is interesting to when we go talk to Web2 companies, is this the first time in the world that you can capture weights at the dataset level, right? Whenever we talk about DeepSeek versus an OpenAI model versus Anthropic model, the weights are at the model level, and they're being decided by PhD researchers, which is great. But you don't really like, everyone's sort of like working with the same data set, or similar data sets. They're manipulating the data in some way, but you don't really have like, you cannot capture the preferences of the person who's labeling and annotating at the data set level. And in this case, it's even economic stake backed. And I think that once you have like preferences at the data set level, backed by economic stake, it completely changes the game. Partly from a OpEx standpoint, because now you don't need 10,000 labelers or 1,000 mechanical Turks to the people working on the mechanical Turk. You can work with 100 people, 200 people who are domain experts. They're like, hey, I'm an expert. I'm willing to put $1,000 behind why I think this is good quality, and that just completely flips the model. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Wow. So like there's a lot of people talk about like data marketplaces too, and I feel like at the end of the day, I mean, that's what your system kind of produces as well. It just has a different take on it, and it kind of lowers costs and, thinks about the interests of the other people involved in the marketplace. Um, Super interesting way of approaching it. Kind of like not something other people are trying to do to approach this problem. That's why I found it super interesting. And then the fact that you guys are able to tie all the value back to repo, like you said before. So like people need repo to do pretty much any action across your entire app, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're of course building abstractions where people, if you want to pay in USDC or other things, and that's kind of like really where Spicenet comes in. But yeah, I'm never a big fan. I'm a fan of BitTensor, but I'm never a big fan of the tokenized subnets. Every subnet having its own token. At least as a core contributor, I don't want to go there. Eventually, of course, whatever governance decides, we'll go that way. But yeah.
True. Yeah. So could you give people an idea of like, there's like four different parties that participate and need repo to participate in your platform. Maybe you could touch on each one and then go deeper into, I'd say, like the content creators and the voters, because the audience here is probably most likely to be one of those two parties.
Yeah, of course. So you have four audiences. You have people who have raw data. So you have projects like CLED and some great other projects on Web3 trying to tackle this. But unlike other projects where they just tell you to upload the data and give you like a couple of bucks, in Repo you actually pay to upload data. That's how we tackle AI slop. So that's actually a revenue stream for us. And for the subnet owner, you have voters, kind of like the same concept as Aerodrome. So these are the people who are taking a bet and bringing liquidity into the system. They're locking a lot of repo. I think like right now we have over $5 million worth of repo locked. And they are coming, playing the mechanics, like doing the predicting on content being published by the publishers. Then you have subnet owners, where we've made it super accessible. So unlike other mechanisms where you need millions of dollars to start a subnet, on Repo it costs less than $500 to spin up one. It's experimental, but yeah, that's revenue for the network. And then finally, you have the data consumer, which in some cases might be the subnet owner, but in other cases it might not be. And we're building a product called Reppo.exchange. If you go there, TLDR, it's a decentralized MCP network. If you're familiar with MCPs, eventually the idea is that an AI agent here that you design to do AI trades for you, that AI agent needs access to some data, which is not just through the X API. How does it go connect with the subnet, right? And we basically built out this entire pipeline so that the agent can pay in USDC, that converts back into repo, comes on as revenue for the subnet owner. The subnet owner is seeding emissions to incentivize publishers and voters, and that's how the economy keeps flowing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to let's go back to the content creators first, because I think when people hear like, oh, I'm paying to upload my data, then they might be like, what's in it for me, right? So do you want to tell them the reward mechanism and how they can get paid out?
Exactly. So the publisher is paying about like $4 to $5. It's 150 repo. So depending on like what repo is trading at, eventually we'll abstract it to like a more like stable fee in our own stable coin. Yeah. But when you pay that fee, think of it like buying a lottery, right? You are taking a bet on yourself. If you think your content is great, creative, you're coming in, taking a bet on yourself, and publishing that into the subnet of your choice. There's multiple subnets, and you are again choosing which subnet. If you think that your video of driving a Tesla or not, like driving a car can be useful for a self-driving subnet. That's great. Maybe your video is also relevant to in the entertainment subnet. You can publish there as well. So it's basically buying a lottery ticket. And what's up for grabs here is 50,000 repo today, which is the public subnets. But each subnet is actually giving a reward. Like the OOP subnet, which is doing market research surveys, they're giving 100,000 repo, right? So it's basically like you incur a cost of $5 to take a bet on yourself, which is, like, will people vote for you, aka how good your work is, and you can make up to $1,250. And we actually have examples on the network where people have converted $5 into like $300.
Yeah. It's like I don't even think of it quite like buying a lottery ticket, because in my mind, buying a lottery ticket is like I'm placing a bet on chance. And
Exactly.
in this case, it's like, you know, like this is why you're getting higher quality data, right? Because and you're not getting AI slop. Like people are coming and they're saying, I will bet $5 that my data is basically of a higher quality than the average data that gets published into this subnet, right? Because if it's of higher quality than the average, they're going to end up making more than $5. Basically, they'll get more votes than the average other one, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, you're totally right. Yeah. So it is very much like, like, yeah, I was just using the lottery thing to like just like explain the mechanics, but it is, yeah,
Right.
it's not a lottery, right? It's because
Lottery in the sense that like small fee can end up with big payouts, but it's like I would rather participate in this than a lottery, because I'm like, okay, like I can do this, right? Like I'm betting on me. I'm not betting on chance. Um,
exactly.
Obviously, like as a founder, like you and I, we love to bet on ourselves, right? This is why we
Yeah.
do what we do.
Yeah.
So that's like an exciting thing. Like if I was a content creator and I wanted to be really ambitious about monetizing my content, I would do this. Like I would bet on myself, and like I would either a be making a bunch of money because I'm consistently the best or amongst the best in that subnet, or B, I would be damn sure to be improving my content creation skills because I'm realizing that other people are clearly doing a better job than me. Right. So it's like, it's kind of like a no bullshit, like, you know, like puts it out on the table. Like, how good are you actually at doing this? Because you're going to get votes if you are, and you're not going to get votes if you aren't. Right.
Exactly. Right. I mean, I think the thing is, one, it's open to anyone. So if you're building vibe coding apps, you're playing with Claude, and you just like ended up building something cool, you can just come and publish, right? I think, but then also when you look at like, like content creators specifically, they are dependent on the algorithm that Instagram or TikTok or these platforms are creating. You are at the mercy of them. They can change a flip one day, and your content is not getting the attention it deserves.
Yeah. Which means you're not getting paid like you should. Right.
Yep, exactly. And so in Repo's case, we're like, hey, we're not deciding it. There's another set of humans who are verified, like they're deciding what is good or bad, and you're making money.
That's actually sick. You're basically saying the humans are the algorithm here.
Basically, yeah, human judgment is the algorithm, right? Which is basically where the mode is. And I think people don't realize it. Like every day you use ChatGPT, you use Instagram, they've like ramped up that so much where they're asking you for like option A, option B, like which one's better, preference signals, tell us which one's better. And people just like give that data for free. It's like
Mhm.
literally gold that people
Yeah, they're just like they're basically asking you for free value here. Like it's like it's like Chat GPT is putting the tip machine out and saying like, hey, you want to give me a 20% tip right now for like answering your prompts? Because
yeah,
people don't
basically.
realize that like that data is, and that's kind of the point of this article you sent, it looks like, is like that data is actually like fungible value, or it's like becoming fungible value. So when you're just giving it away for free, you're essentially just offering up value and like donating it to this company that you're already paying, right? So that it's basically like if you're pissed off about the tip options at every single place you shop in America, that it's kind of the equivalent of that, but the AI is asking you for a data tip instead of a monetary one.
Yeah, and it's happening. It is going to accelerate, right? I mean, you have robots coming in. People just don't like robots. Going to be like, "How did you like how I folded your clothes?" And you'll just be like, "Oh, that was great. You should have done this next time." Like, but like,
Yeah.
people don't realize, like, oh, of course, maybe you benefited a little bit from that, but really, like, like you just gave it for free. You gave your domain knowledge for free. So
and like, and that's the thing. I use, like, I've been using Notion AI a lot, and I'm like, yeah, I tell it like everything, like feedback wise, because I'm like, this thing is just helping me do my job. So sometimes it is like mutually beneficial, of course, but there's other times where it's just not really, and it's monetizable for you, and yeah, you're kind of giving it away. Okay, so going back to how people get involved, right? If they show up to your website right now, like, what do they have to do to participate?
if they show up the website, they can, first of all, they have to choose if they want to become one of three. If they want to become a subnet owner, if they want to become a publisher or a voter, and from there they can start to, decide which subnet they want to participate in. We're improving, like we're putting out some content to make the onboarding a bit easier. But what we see is, if you take 10 minutes, to understand how the publishing flow works or the voter flow works, it's fairly easy. So yeah, you can come in if you think you're more the creative person, you have some content to share. Come, pay a small fee and participate in subnets, and in 2 days, you'll know if you want money. And or if you think that you're a domain expert and you are really good at assessing things, yeah, come lock some repo. Doesn't have to be a lot, and you can start voting on things and just familiarize yourself. I think one cool thing that we built is actually this on-chain privacy mechanism called, it's a commit reveal scheme. So the first 2 days when you vote, you actually, of course, cannot see what other people voted, and then everyone reveals their votes. So it's like a game of poker. Which and then after that, after the next 2 days, we give them people 2 days to reveal their votes as well, and then everything settles on chain and the payouts are done. So it's actually people who have, in our community, if you go to Discord, people are kind of getting addicted to the mechanism because there's a suspense of like, oh, who will basically reveal the votes, and it's becoming really fun. But I think in the process we're generating so much value for the data consumers and AI training data.
Absolutely, yeah. So right now, the person shows up, they purchase repo, right?
Yeah.
And then it's all on base chain. So just
Obviously.
because I want to tell people about how we're helping you out here. So do you want to talk about basically, like, if let's say the user's on Ethereum for
Yeah.
fun, I have like ETH on Ethereum. What do I got to do to participate in your platform? Let's say as like a voter, from that ETH on Ethereum.
Yeah, so I mean, if you had ETH on Ethereum, you would have to go bridge it to base ETH, and then you would need to swap base ETH for some repo on one of the dexes. We're not on any major sexes yet, and so that's kind of the flow. It's a little very painful, and then yeah, and I think same for publishing fee, right? Because the entire system is designed around repo. So that's very painful. And so, yeah, I think for us, when I heard about Spicenet and what you guys are doing, it's basically like, it doesn't really matter, what asset you hold. And the person can just come in, bridge in real time. They don't even need to know the concept of bridging, which is the most beautiful thing here. And then on the other side, right, we have already been considering going on other chains. I mean, yeah, other chains were trying to poach us. They were like, "Hey, come build on our platform, and we'll pay you money." And I was like, I've just never been interested in chain shopping. I think that whole meta and like the whole approach is just weird. Yeah, so our whole thing is like, hey, how can we be available on every ecosystem? Because AI training data does not bias, and everyone needs it. And while making it super simple and easy for people to just kind of onboard onto the app, which is either by publishing stuff for which they need to pay in repo or lock repo. And I think that's the way the adapters work. The demo that you showed me is just like incredible. So
yeah, because you also talked about earlier on this call, like you want to basically abstract the need to go and purchase the repo, because like the content creator might understand very well your application, but like you're not really like a DeFi app. So
no.
it's not necessarily that the person that understands your value and your use case also understands how to bridge, how to like go swap into repo, show up, connect their wallet, lock that repo. So like you want to make that available to USD stables and then eventually make it available to fiat, right? And then people won't even like, I think eventually with your app, it's inevitable that people won't know it's on the blockchain and they're just going to show up. Like they could download it on their phone and it could become the new thing they scroll on their phone, right? And they just deposit some fiat into it and it ends up on chain in stables. And then whenever they're, casting their votes, it's automatically swapping into repo, obviously providing value to your token. And like everyone wins from that UX, right? Your token gets to accrue the value. They get to use the assets that they know and love. And like they might not even know that repo is like being bought off the market and just having this field day of a bull run like you guys literally just had, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I think that's where the real
yeah.
sauce comes in.
I mean, you're like 45 steps ahead. I don't think I ever told you about this, but that's great. So basically, yes, that's the vision, right? We eventually want to have an app. We're actually going to go and live on Product Hunt sometime in Q1. Really, like, look, I think like, the audience here can also, understand this, right? Like the majority of the content creators are not going to come from Web3. We just don't want people like, shilling other tokens and KOLs being the content. You want, like every person, like we don't Web2, Web3, whatever. And so eventually we need Spicenet to go and launch in Product Hunt, where the average person who's a vibe coder using Replit or Lovable or Cloud Code, they don't give a damn about crypto. They just want to be like, oh, okay, so you're telling me that I can, this thing I created, I can just pay $5 and make money. I'm like, yeah, like that's exactly all you need to know. And they're like, okay, how can I do that? And I don't want it when they're like, how can I do that? I don't want them to tell like, hey, okay, so go buy some USDC, then convert that into repo, then like actually get some base ETH so that you can publish, pay the gas fee. They're like, I already lost you. They're like, okay,
and I think talking to people in San Francisco, like one of the things that shocked me is that they don't really understand that there actually is a lot of great things coming out of DeFi right now. And I thought they would kind of be more on top of it. And I was writing about this in an article that I published on X last week. But like I was expecting people to be more on top of the Web3 movement, understand all of the like real world applications that are coming out. But the thing I realized is that because most people can't get a grasp of the UX, they all of the apps that are being built, even though they're really cool, are like only being used by like the DeFi nerd, which is just like not the total addressable market at all, right? We're such a small group of people relative to the actual TAM of the products that are being built. Especially in your case, it's not even a fintech product. The TAM is so much larger. And yeah, we just don't really have the ability to bring those people in right now. And the thing that like my take that I keep telling people, and they're like, so when does DeFi take off? When do I start caring about DeFi and start hearing about it everywhere? My take is kind of that like they won't. They'll just like there's just going to be apps that they love and they'll be like, okay, sick, I'm going to use this app, and they won't understand that that's DeFi powering it. Like I don't think the world will get to a point where like everyone wakes up in the morning and is like, yay, DeFi, right? It'll just be like DeFi is just powering all of this stuff that we're doing. Like blockchain is powering so much of the things that people are doing and they don't really know. And like a good example is like TCP/IP, right? Like this literally powers all of this interaction that we do on the internet. Anytime you're like sharing information between two sources on the internet, you're leveraging TCP/IP. But if I walk outside and ask somebody, hey, like, do you know what TCP/IP does? They're like, what is that? Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of DeFi, and that's the vision I have. That's like where I want to get your guys' app to the point where it's like so easy to use that people don't even know it's DeFi. We'll start by making it so easy that people don't know what the repo token is necessarily that are using your app, and they won't necessarily know what chain your app is on. Exactly. I think that's like mission one, and then the second one is like like to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I mean, there are two truths to that, right? I think are truths and facts. One is every AI agent is an app, or vice versa. I think that's just like a fact that people,
Mm,
will stop debating about it at maybe 2026. Also,
mm,
CC, and like where every big person, like there are the World Economic Forum right now, and he literally went on stage and said that like within the next 2 years, like agents are not going to use the normal banking rails, right? That is
mm,
basically trying to say like agents are going to use DeFi, right? Again,
mm,
are using the word DeFi, and I think like people are not. And of course, I'm bullish Repo and Spicenet, but I think that's kind of like where things change. Our whole goal is eventually we're building agents. We're going to build agents for people to publish, for people to vote, do agent to agent collaboration. Like
mm.
humans are going to like allow people to like humans are going to get AI agents to do the work to generate AI training data. And also on Reppo.exchange, agents are kind of coming and negotiating and discovering data. All of that requires like seamless payment trails. And I think that everyone is obsessed with building some L1 for agents. Like, I think is completely bullshit. Sorry to say that, but it's like completely, right?
Hey, it's spicy takes, baby. This is what we live for.
You need a new blockchain for agents to collaborate. What you need is like stuff like Spicenet, which is like abstracting like the complexity and just like letting them, work through like whatever they exist, right? If you tell me that, if I want to accept payments on, on chain rails for my agent, I have to deploy on your chain. Like, no, like that's just like not what I'm going to do. Uh,
Yeah.
right. I think like what makes most sense here is, yeah, fact one, all apps are agents, all agents are apps. Like this is like a fact. And option like the two is agents are going to use on-chain rails because no one wants to like wait for 3 days for some approval settling, right? It's just like I think it's just like a thing that any smart person in crypto understands this. And I think the thing that people don't understand though, that is like you don't need a new L1 for to do that. Agents just need like ways to move things quicker, and
Mhm.
whoever can basically solve that problem is actually the one that is going to capture value. The L1 or whatever chain is commoditized already. So
Yeah. I'm gonna use that in a pitch. I'm gonna have to steal that. Yeah, like essentially all the infrastructure is already there. It's already like we've already accomplished what we need. We just have to be able to access it. Boom. That's where Spicenet comes in. I'm gonna start telling people that.
yeah. Yeah, totally. I think
Awesome.
yeah, I think with Spicenet, right? I think like it's not like you guys need to like play in the AI space. I think AI will come play with you because it's just like a needed thing. Of course, we're one of the first AI projects to come on Spicenet, and I think there's going to be many more.
You're the
Uh,
very first. In fact, when you told me that you wanted to integrate SpiceFlow, I like it didn't occur to me when we first met. I was like, you showed me your app. I'm like, this is so sick. Like, love that. I want to see where this goes. It didn't even click to me because I'm like, oh, you're not a DeFi app. So I wasn't like, oh, like, for sure, like you should integrate this thing. And then you looked into SpiceNet. You're like, yo, can we do an integration? I was
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, we're we're getting outside the realms of DeFi now. This is awesome. So yeah, it's super exciting to kind of see a new use case
yeah,
for Spice Flow, and yeah, I hope to see more of the on-chain AI sector come and play with it and leverage the access that we're allowed to grant them, the distribution that we can give them. And yeah, you've been kind enough to start making some intros already on that front too. So really appreciate you for that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to hop off. I got a
yeah.
call that I got to prep for. Big meeting in 15 minutes. Might see you later today in person at the office. Let me know if you're going. Yeah, I'll let you direct our crowd here. You got 723 people watching. What do you want to tell them? Shill the project, the socials, whatever you want them to go take a look at.
Yeah, I think the main things, of course, I want to kind of like, highlight is definitely check out Reppo.ai. You can earn up to $2,000 every 2 days. It's not a small amount of money. Just, if it takes like 10 to 15 minutes of time to understand how it works, do it. Our community is awesome. Join our Discord. This is our X. in V2 of the version, we're launching some exciting stuff. We're launching an incentive / bribing mechanism where you can farm fees being generated in subnets. There's a lot of robotics stuff. If you have ever thought about like, hey, I want to be part of the robotics revolution, but I don't know how to, we're spinning up a few subnets where you can literally come and vote on robots doing interesting work and, judging that. So yeah, you can, I think this is like how we want to pitch it, right? If you're just want to make money, you can do that. If you're like, hey, I want to, be part of like the AI revolution and, capture value there and, or be like help generate value, you can all do that on Reppo.ai today. And the last thing I'll say is, we're always looking for, more contributors. Or we work on like we call that like retroactive public goods funding. So yeah, if you contribute to Repo, we will pay you retroactively. We don't do any kind of like, pay you first and like, pay to shill or whatever. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. But yeah, super excited about the Spicenet integration. I think it goes live sometime in mid to late February. So
yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, dudes, excited to continue to work together. It's going to be a good one. Yeah, thanks for everyone for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. This is the boy RG. Make sure you follow Reppo on X, and we'll be seeing more of RG very soon, I anticipate.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, till next time, guys, stay spicy. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.
Easy.